Hey, welcome back to PEP and EDU 417, Section P. We are on Chapter 4, which is Curriculum Development. We'll start discussing some curriculum development, what GLEs and GLOs are. We learned those earlier in the semester. And we will close out this module or this video on writing performance objectives. We'll teach you to use observable language and write three-part performance objectives that you'll start using in the lesson plan process. All right, so we'll start out before we get going. We've worked on some NASP standards, and let's just quickly review the various NASP standards. Remember, there are 5 standards. They are the national level foundational ideas of what a quality physical education program teaches. Number 1, the student should be able to demonstrate competency in a variety of motor skills and movement patterns. NASP Standard 2, the ability to apply knowledge of concepts, principles, strategies, and tactics related to movement performance. Number 3 is what's really critical in our field now, is demonstrating the knowledge and skills to achieve and maintain a healthy level of physical activity and fitness. Being healthy, having better physical activity patterns, and a higher level of fitness is very critical to the health of each individual, and it's something that we can really promote as a profession. NASP standard number 4 brings in the soft skills, exhibits responsible personal and social behavior, including respect for yourself and others. That's learning a variety of things in the affective domain, how you feel, as well as your actions. Are you going to have good sportsmanship? Are you going to have good ethics? And that can actually transcend sports into business and your areas of performance in the career field. And number 5 is really on the affective domain, and it helps us tie everything together. Students should recognize the value of physical activity for health, enjoyment, personal challenge, self-expression, and social interaction. It may be one, multiple, or all of those why people decide to persist or resume or even start a activity program or playing in a sport or doing something active. So that's our review from some previous learning. And we're going to go ahead, today's big ideas. So what are the big ideas for today? What will we be able to do? Might even say these are our objectives. First of all, we want to be able to define the term curriculum, as the textbook would tell us. Can we list and explain various instructional models? Do we even know what an instructional model is? Can we discuss the 7 steps in designing quality curriculum? We'll define and explain what GLEs and GLOs are. Can you list the 3 parts of a performance objective? And by the end, this will be actually our assessment, can you write an observable 3-part performance objective? So that's today's big ideas, or your personal objectives. You should be able to do each of those 6 things by the end of this video lecture. So, what is a curriculum? How do we define curriculum? All right, the textbook explains that curriculum is a framework of learning experiences that promote physical activity, skill development, and fitness. All right, why is a curriculum important? It gives some kind of sequence, some kind of scope, and some kind of direction. If you don't remember scope and sequence, scope is how big or broad your program is. That encompasses all the activities, everything you might do. And sequence is the order in which you do it. So make sure you understand those terms, scope and sequence. But a curriculum provides both that scope and sequence and provides some direction. The curriculum basically could be considered a calendar or a pacing guide. You'll hear it called a lot of different things. It includes a set of beliefs and goals. So the most important thing in the curriculum is there is some kind of philosophy. Do you go by the NASP standards? Do you use the GLEs and GLOs developed by Shape America or Mo Aford, which is now Shape Missouri? What is your school district's philosophy? Do you have some different beliefs and goals than what the state and national level discusses? So remember, the curriculum is a document that is usually developed by a committee or group of teachers that are the experts in physical education or health, but they use some kind of standards that might be national, state, or local. And in most public schools, your curriculum document is approved by your Board of Education, right? Some boards, when you're teaching health education, sex education, if that's going to be part of it, it needs to be board approved, or else you'll have parents flocking to your school. If the board approves teaching something, then they will be redirected to the school board. But make sure if you're teaching anything controversial, it's part of the approved curriculum. Next, what is actually in a curriculum? What's a curriculum look like? It provides units and lesson frameworks. So think of it as a blueprint for teachers. If you were just developing a mini curriculum from scratch, you might start with how many weeks are we going to have school? When do we start? Let's get a calendar. What are we going to do first? Try to find some kind of sequence. It's really good if you use a pacing guide to alternate between team sports and individual activities and lifetime sports, and then some knowledge-based stuff, and then rotate through so students don't just get so segmented or get bored with a specific unit. All right. You might hear it called a pacing guide. A pacing guide is usually more attached to the GLE, GLOs, and talks about grade levels and what students should learn along the way. All right. So that's the pacing guide is more of a sequence. All right. And then it is aligned, remember, with the NASB standards, Missouri Learning Standards, Show Me standards, or what other state or specific organization standards you have. Next, it's important to understand what instructional models are. Instructional models for elementary physical education should really focus in on two things. Movement education. We want to teach our young students in the K through 5, K through 6, however your school's set up, about different ideas of movement. We're not really teaching sports skills at this age. We're not teaching sports. We're teaching locomotor, non-locomotor, manipulative skills, how you might be able to use those skills in different activities, and then possibly in your upper elementary, get into some lead-up games or some sport-like activities. You might want to use a multi-activity model. Remember to balance your activities. Don't just focus in on some kind of something modeled around team sports. Try to have some rhythmic activities, some dance, some lifetime activities, and rotate between different things to keep your students active, engaged, and learning new things. So, what is a curriculum model or an instructional model, you might hear it called? I'll explain this briefly. A curriculum model provides structure for how you engage students with your instruction and provide active learning. I'll go through a variety of curriculum models on the next slide and help you kind of relate it. So no single curriculum model is sufficient for delivering an entire curriculum. You shouldn't use the same way of teaching, the same model, the same instruction, the same type of assessments for everything, because different activities require a different way of teaching. Some students also require modified lessons. Some students are hands-on or active learners. Some students can learn by reading. Some students need to learn by doing, some by kinesthetic feel. All right. Each model has some kind of specific focus or theme. You might hear it called a theme model that can be used to develop your instructional concepts, goals, models, and then how we base assessment objectives off of that. So each model could be focused on a different thing. Your outdoor education model might not be the best for teaching team sports. All right. But a multi-model approach can be used within a unit or possibly even within a lesson to give different models to help on students that achieve different, that need various strategies, right? So using multiple models when we're teaching within a unit is really important because no single model can deliver an entire curriculum or even an entire unit. Well, so let me go into this a little bit deeper here. Here are the 8 main theme curriculum models, and I'll just kind of explain each of them to you briefly. The personal and social responsibility model is where you're teaching people life skills to act responsibly. This might be blended within different things. If you're teaching golf, for instance, you're going to need to teach the ethics of the game. You even need to teach fan behavior. Fan behavior is different if you go to a play or if you go to a sporting event. If you're going out and doing something outdoor education, what's your social responsibility to leave the environment the way you found it or even better? Do you pick up your trash or do you leave it there? And then this is another area where we can teach teamwork, communication skills, social skills, even sportsmanship through the personal and social responsibility model. Number 2, the skill theme approach. Just like it sounds, you're going to teach the skills first and then go into the activity. This is a common way to teach. We want to learn to walk before we run, before we leap, before we hop, before we jump. All right, so you're going to teach the skills in a sequence and then put them into some type of activity. So your focus is teaching the skill, teaching correct form, ensuring that everybody can do it correctly, adequately, and safely, and then moving on to make it more activity-based. Number 3 is adventure education. Adventure education is also maybe cooperative education. You might have heard it called that. It is where everybody that's along on this adventure is, if the whole group is successful, everybody's successful. It takes everybody to do it. So you might have seen an activity where everybody gets on a tarp. You're on a magic carpet. You're flying. You have 8 people on it, and we have to turn the rug over because the carpet's flying upside down and it's about ready to drop. And we have a minute to turn it over and not let anybody fall. So if we do that, then everybody's successful and everybody comes along and is successful in the adventure and gets the win. So adventure education is a great way, especially in elementary, to do cooperative type activities and games, and that would also work on personal and social responsibility if you think of it that way. Number 4, outdoor education. This is using your environment to teach different skills. This could be anything from fishing to hunting to hunters and safety, archery, orienteering, which is learning to use a map and a compass. All right, you might go hiking, camping, put a lot of different things in outdoor education. That is a great lifetime skill that even though people might not do it now, they might want to know over their lifespan how to do a lot of those different things. So it's a great one to teach. If you're in a rural area, outdoor education is going to be a heavy part of your curriculum usually. You might even get into things such as boater education if you live near the lake. Number 5, TGFU, or Teaching Games for Understanding. This is where you teach different concepts. So you would focus in on NASP standard number 2 and strategies. And I'll give you an example of what this is. You would take games such as net games. And that's any game played with a net in the middle, not basketball with a net. But you would teach the concepts and strategies of net games. So if you think of it, your whole objective in every net game you play is to get your opponent on one area and then drop the ball, birdie, or whatever the case on the other area. You might do this in a team like volleyball. You might do this in badminton, tennis, pickleball, right? Any game there's a net in the middle, the objectives are kind of the same. Even though the skill of hitting a tennis ball or a pickleball or with a badminton racket or the volleyball, the skill's different. The whole idea of the game and the strategy is similar. So you teach the strategy and then employ it in different games. So it's a different way of teaching. It's a little backwards from the skill theme approach. Number 6, this is 6 and 7 are kind of more of elective type classes at the high school level, but sport education could be where you take a sport and it's a quarter or semester long and you're going to go in deep detail of this sport. All right, so say for instance if you have basketball and that's your sport education for the quarter. Students will come in, they will learn the basic skills, dribbling, passing, shooting, defending. They'll learn drills, they'll learn more strategies such as the pick and roll, right? How to set down screens, how to shoot off the screen, how to defend the screens, how to read the screens if you're the ball handler. You might learn different strategies, how to play against man-to-man or zone defense. And usually you're going to have 3 or 4 groups. So you in the sport education within your class, and you might have 2 teams playing against each other, one team in another area of the gym practicing themselves, and then the fourth team could be officiating the game, keeping score, keeping stats, and then you would rotate through. So it's a real deep education in a single sport. Like I said, that's more of a high school level elective class. Cultural studies could be integrated into anything where you can have some discussions about different concepts. How can we use sports in the situation with troubles in the world today? Whether that's health and fitness from a pandemic, how do we stay in shape? All right. How does it play within our culture? How has Title IX changed sports? How are males and females looked at differently? All right. We might even look at different racial inequities, cultural inequities, socioeconomic inequities within sports, fitness, even health related things. And number 8, the fitness and wellness education model. Anything where you're teaching long-term fitness, health, or wellness related skills. This might be a strength training and conditioning class. This might be a walk jog for fitness class. Anywhere where you're teaching the fitness first and then the activity is just kind of secondary. All right, so those are your main theme curriculum models. If you'd like to know more about the curriculum models and how you can put those in, you can get in PEP 406, which is offered every other semester, or I'm sorry, every fourth semester, every year. And we really go into these curriculum models deeply and give you ways to put them into activity programs as well as a classroom. All right, next, let's talk about the steps of designing a quality curriculum. All right, there are 7 important steps for designing a curriculum. This is the order you go in to really put it together. If you are the curriculum committee chairman, you should probably have this order set out and start out by developing your guiding philosophy. What are some of the curriculum models we're going to employ? What's more important to our community? Is it going to be teaching for health and fitness? Is it going to be teaching motor skills? Is it going to be teaching some sports related skills? What's our curriculum philosophy? Why should physical education be good for kids, and what can we do to help keep physical education an important part of the curriculum? Number 2 is your conceptual framework. Kind of what are your standards? What is your overarching goals? All right. Are we going to use the NASB standards and have those 5 and we're going to teach these 5 areas? Or are we going to develop our own framework? Outside organizations such as the YMCA are going to have their own pillars or foundations. Right? That would be more of your conceptual framework. What is our whole kind of overarching big idea goals that we want our program to all lead to? Number 3, it's important to consider environmental factors. What do you do in your area of the country? If you're rural, you're going to really probably have a section of outdoor education. You might not if you're in an urban setting, but you should at least have some kind of small section that you touch on lifetime sports and outdoor education. If your school district is close to or has access to a pool, tennis courts, that's going to be environmental factors. What can you get to that you can teach your students? That might also be budgetary factors if you think of it that way. Number 4, what are your standards and objectives going to be? All right? Do we follow the national and state standards to develop our learning objectives, or do we use something else? All right? Do we use an older curriculum guide and we're just going to update it? Number 5, try to focus on student-centered activities that are engaging for students. Not just, we're going to go through this so you know it. Try to get your students engaged. All right? If you have students, if you want to do some different things, you might build up and play Frisbee golf before you play golf. You might play ultimate Frisbee before you play flag football. All right? So try to find some student-centered activities that can really get students engaged, active, and participating. Limit your lines, limit your time that one person's getting assessed and everybody else is watching. Try to make sure everybody's active and engaged most of the time. Number 6, organize your lessons into units and then group them by grade. Make sure you have your calendar, you have your scope in front of you, what all you want to teach, your sequence, what order you want to teach it, and how do we progress then from grade to grade? Do we look at our GLOs and GLEs from Shape, Missouri, and ensure that we're moving along the right pattern at the right time? If you haven't taken the motor learning class yet, look at your motor learning and development patterns and make sure you're going in the right order with the right sequence and progression. Number 7, then when we come to the end, we need to evaluate and then modify our curriculum. Even though a curriculum gets approved and it's a process, it shouldn't just sit on a shelf. Anytime a teacher comes up with a great way or a great activity to integrate into that curriculum, teachers like to call this best practices because it's worked really good with this set of students. You're going to continue to modify that curriculum every year. New things may come up. If you're teaching in a health class or a health curriculum, that changes rapidly. COVID-19 wasn't around 5 years ago, so it's going to be something new. A pandemic will be on the cusp of what you need to do. All right? So let's remember, what is a GLE and a GLO? A GLE is a grade level expectation. It is defined by the Missouri Learning Standards with some input previously from the Show Me Standards. It's really the expected performance level of a student completing the specific course. It's a goal, all right? What do we expect students to understand? A GLO, and you might hear a grade level outcome or a grade level objective. Those are two slightly different things, but all these are pretty synonymous. They all go together. As far as Shape Missouri put this together, a GLO is a grade level outcome. It's standards developed by NASP and Shape America, and then adopted by Missouri, which is now MoShape, and used basically as the framework for the Missouri Learning Standards. By the end of a grade, the learner will demonstrate competence in a certain criteria. It's really the end result. So the goal, the end result, they're going to be synonymous as we go through this process right here in our curriculum and performance objective unit. So next, what is actually a performance objective? A performance objective guides your learning. It provides teachers with some kind of direction. So it is the purpose of a performance objective is to provide teachers with direction, provide students with an idea of what their goals for learning are going to be. So performance objectives provides a specific purpose for that lesson or activity, and you may have multiple ones throughout the lesson. Why are they important? They provide a foundation for designing lesson content. All right. Basically, this serves as a guide for designing the lesson, developing the scope and sequence of activities, how you're going to teach it. Do you start with a demonstration? Do you have individual practice first or guided practice first? Is it more of a whole or more of a part or maybe a whole part whole method of teaching? How could we even then assess it? So it provides our foundation for the lesson content. And then third here is it demonstrates what's expected and what students will learn or do. When you tell your classroom the performance objective for the day, it explains exactly, we're going to do this in this setting, and this is how good I'd like for you to do it. That's the 3 parts we'll get to in a little bit. There's 3 important criteria. These aren't the parts, but these are 3 important criteria that you need to understand when you're writing performance objectives. They're just kind of your overarching goal, your umbrella over the top of it. Number 1, your performance objective must be observable. You must be able to see if a student met it. And I'll go through what's observable and what's not here in a second. Number 2, when you're writing the performance objective, it must be measurable. We must be able to actually evaluate and assess it. Words like learn and understand, does that really mean, can you assess that? Well, maybe if we do a test. But if we want to make it measurable, that would be 80% of the time, 3 out of 5 times in less than a minute. There needs to be some kind of standard there that we're measuring against. And then number 3, when you're writing performance objectives for your specific class, they need to be attainable. If they're too hard, only a few students will really motivate themselves to reach it. And the other students that don't think they can reach it, they're not going to be very motivated. If it's too easy and everybody can get there, some of your expert students won't get there. You may have different goals. You may set an attainable goal that students can reach that's an acceptable level of performance, and then you may have a higher standard for a gold medal type performance. Here's some examples of performance objectives. The first one, students will learn to get open to receive a pass. That might be something you would say that you're going to do in the class, but it's really not a well-written performance objective. It needs some improvement. Is it measurable? Not necessarily. Is it observable? You can watch somebody and they can get open for a pass. Slightly observable. But learn is really a non-observable adjective. So look at the second one here in green. While working cooperatively in groups, students will be able to develop 2 ways to get open to receive a pass and demonstrate those skills to class. That's pretty specific. The students know they're going to work in groups. They have to figure out 2 different ways to do it. That's the mental part. And then they actually have to do it, demonstrate it to the class. Right? So that's a better version. It's kind of observable, it's measurable, and more than likely it's obtainable. So let's talk about observable and non-observable for a minute. All right? Observable performance objective adjectives would be, non-observable would be develop, grasp, learn, and understand. Can we observe those? Possibly, but they're very vague. It's going to be up to the person that's evaluating if you think somebody understands it. There's no really scoring guide kind of built into the adjective. Right? Observable. Right? Think of these more as verbs. You're actually doing some kind of action. Can you apply knowledge? Can you demonstrate it? Can you design a play? Can you define a term? Can you discuss 3 different concepts? Can you execute, which would also mean perform? Can you identify? Can you complete an activity? Right? And then in physical activity based classes, can you perform the skill? So when we're looking at performance objectives, make sure we're using these observable terms in our 3-part performance objective. If you use any of these 4, you're going to lose credit. So these are the no-nos, non-observable. We want to use observable. So let's learn about the 3 parts of a performance objective. So think about a skill you may want to teach if you were teaching an elementary class. All right? So when you think about that, don't just say basketball, because we're not going to teach the game of basketball. We're actually going to teach individual skills here. So that might be shooting the basketball with correct form. All right? So here's the 3 parts, though. It's the task, the condition, and the criteria. And you don't have to write them in this order when you're a teacher, but for our purpose, we're going to write them in this order because it just makes it simpler to understand. The task is the what. What do you want students to do? Do you want them to dribble a soccer ball? Do you want them to perform a forward roll in gymnastics? Do you want them to work cooperatively to complete an activity? So what do you actually want them to do? The condition next is the how. How will students perform this task? All right? If you're dribbling a ball, is it between the cones or down the floor or field? Is it against an opponent? All right? If you're asking them to hit an object, do you want them to hit the tennis ball into the correct service court? All right? So the condition is the how. How are students going to perform the task? You might even say in a drill, but the more specific you are here, the better. When you first tell your students what you're going to do, I like to just give them the task and condition, and then once we see where they're at, then I add in the criteria. But for our purpose, we're going to write all 3 parts of the performance objective, and it's important to know them. The last one is criteria. How well do you want people to do it? What is the standard of performance? Is that 3 out of 5, say a number of attempts, in a certain amount of time, in less than 30 seconds? Using correct form. Oh, now we're bringing in an idea where we can assess form in some kind of checklist or rubric. Or you can always use a certain percentage, 50% of the time. So task is the what, condition is the how you're going to do it, and the criteria is the how well you expect performance to be. So let's look here. Here's an example of a three-part performance objective. Students will be able to serve a tennis ball into the correct service court 3 out of 5 times. So what is the task? That's a pause for you to think about it. What is the condition? And then lastly, what is the criteria? So here's how I would like you to write them. It makes life so much easier on yourself and others. Students will be able to serve the tennis ball. Task. Have a comma. Into the correct service court. Condition. That's what they're doing. They're serving it into the correct tennis court. You might put in a drill setting. And then the last one after the last comma, 3 out of 5 times. That's your criteria. So wherever you see my commas, that's a break. The task, the condition, the criteria. So understand that. All right, hopefully you understand performance objectives a little bit. If we were meeting in class instead of a video lecture, we would go over several of these and discuss them and make sure we were on the right part. If you have any questions and you don't understand this, write me a sample performance objective and then say, give me a sentence, and then say, is this correct on the task, condition, and criteria? I'm confused. So if you want to do a couple practice ones and send them to me, I can give you some feedback, but write them in the task, comma, condition, comma, criteria method. So here's your activity. Think of a specific skill you might want to teach in class. Kind of went over that a few seconds ago. If you were going to select what you're teaching in your individual teaching, dribbling a soccer ball, right? So answer the 3 questions, because your whole lesson is going to be built around your performance objective. So think of the closing activity, what you're going to want students to do to show you that they met some type of criteria, they met your performance level, they met their goal. So answer your 3 questions for that skill. If we're teaching dribbling in soccer, you might at the end want them to dribble a soccer ball between cones without losing it in 45 seconds. So that would be your task, condition, criteria. That's actually your assessment at the end of the lesson to provide you with some way to evaluate them. So if you frame your mind around that, that should help you write your performance objective. I'm going to teach dribbling a soccer ball, but how would I assess that at the end? We haven't went over assessments yet. We'll do that in a later module. But how would I assess it at the end to see if they learned dribbling a soccer ball? Well, you'll start with some warm-up activities, some ball handling, maybe some passing, and then you'll work on some dribbling, stationary, real close to yourself on the move, maybe add a defender, maybe have some different games. But your whole idea is to get to the end of the lesson to see if students can dribble a soccer ball around cones in less than 45 seconds without losing it. Now, your 3-part method, people sometimes want to put too much information in there. And although you want to be, give them a lot of information, you're going to say this multiple times, so try to be really clear, try to be concise, which means use less words, be short, but still be correct and provide enough detail. So the 3-part method should be clear, concise, and always use that observable performance language to make it a correctly written observable performance objective. So hopefully, while I was going through this slide, you were thinking of an activity you wanted to teach, how you might write this performance objective, what the task is, what the condition is, what the criteria is. I've given you several examples in this video lecture. So here is your assignment. You are actually going to pick in your mind the skill. Remember, it's not a sport. It's not an overarching activity. It's a very specific skill that you would want to teach. You may or may not be able to do this, but act like that this is what you're picking to teach later in your individual teaching lesson. You're going to use the 3-part method we just discussed in the last 10 minutes or so of this video lecture to write an observable, remember use observable language, performance objective in the correct order. So you're going to answer the following 3 questions. Number 1, what is the task? Number 2, what is the condition? Number 3, what is the criteria? Each one of these should be phrases, not full sentences or paragraphs. They should be 3 to 10 word phrases. Then you're going to take those in that order and write the task, comma, the condition, comma, and the criteria. And that would be your full 3-part performance objective. So print that for use in your portfolio, right? Print it, put it in your portfolio. We're going to use it in class next time we meet to discuss it to make sure we're all on the right track. But make sure you post this by the deadline in Canvas. So if you have any questions, make sure you email me and ask for some feedback. But the first thing I'm going to do probably is ask if you watch the video. So make sure you're watching the video, looking at all this, practicing some things, because I'll probably ask me to send your sample of of your performance objective, and then I'll give you some feedback. All right. So make sure you post that to Canvas because it is an assignment. So here's today's review on curriculum and performance objectives. Do you understand what a curriculum is? The definition is it's a framework of learning experiences that promote physical activity, skill development, fitness, or any health-related activity or health-related fitness. Most people would say it's a blueprint for teachers to use in designing learning experiences. All right, so understand the definition, both the clinical or textbook definition as well as the regular jargon definition, the conversational definition of curriculum. Number 2, what are the 3 important criteria for performance objectives? These aren't the 3 parts. What are the 3 important criteria we went over? So think of a performance objective must be observable, and we went over the language on that. It must be measurable. We need to have some kind of goal in there. And it must be attainable for your specific students. All right? Remember, you're thinking of this as elementary students. So is it kindergarten? Is it 5th grade? But it's not high school. It's not college level. It's not competitive athletics. All right? Number 3, what are the 3 parts of a performance objective? And we just went over that. It's the task, the condition, and the criteria. The task is the what are we doing? The condition is the how are we doing it? And the criteria is the how well or how are we going to judge it? All right? So there's our review for today. So here's your to-do list. All right? Your performance objective assignment is due. Look on Canvas for the deadline for that. Write your 3-part performance objective and the task, condition, and criteria. Then put it all together into a sentence. Remember their phrases. Task is a phrase, condition's phrase, criteria is a phrase, and then it's a full sentence in that order, divided by commas. Post it to Canvas by the deadline and make sure you print it and bring it to the next classroom meeting because we're going to discuss it. Do your Chapter 4 quiz. That Chapter 4 quiz is most of it's over the reading in the textbook, and some of it's based on this video presentation. So complete your Chapter 4 quiz by the deadline so we can assess and hold you accountable for your learning and try to see what kind of understanding level you have. And then this is a one-shot module, so we will move on to the next module. Read Chapter 3, Preparing a Quality Lesson in the Textbook. This is probably the most important chapter for you to read because everything you do from here on out, your individual teaching, your co-teaching, your video teaching is going to be based on the idea, can you prepare a quality lesson that we can then translate to a practice plan or activity plan? But do you know how to prepare a quality lesson? So make sure you read Chapter 3 before we meet next time. It's very important to read that chapter. All right. Remember your observations. Have you got your placement contract signed? It's due during the next class meeting. It must be signed by the participant and the coach, not some kind of email. So you go get on that immediately, right? So make sure you have your placement contract signed. What about your observation worksheets? Those you need to complete on your first 3 visits to your observation. it helps you be detailed and actively observe what's going on. Make sure you're writing out different things. Don't just scribble a thing or two in there. Try to actively observe and learn and see what's going on. And then you're going to use these observation worksheets as the foundation for your observation reflection paper. You can go back and pick out some things you saw because that's part of the outline. All right, so this is the only video for this module if you're a PEP student. But if you're an EDU student, make sure you watch video number 2 for this module. It goes through aligning both Show Me standards and GLEs with content so you understand how to do that on your lesson plan later. All right, so there's going to be another short video. It's Module 4 video number 2. There's 2 documents if you're an EDU student you need to download first, and that is located in the same area you just found this video. All right, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email. If not, make sure you're completing everything on your to-do list, your performance objective assignment, your Chapter 4 quiz, and read Chapter 3. Have a great day. I look forward to seeing you in class next time.